leave it as unprocessed as I possibly can. So I'm just going to add those along. Some people find the flavor of flax a little bit too real, and if that's you, add just a little bit of cinnamon when you grind it up, and I think no one will be the wiser. All right. You can do this every couple of days. You don't have to wait and do it every morning. Because of the flax, I wouldn't grind more than you can use in 2 or 3 days at a time. All right, so we have our cereal all done. We have our flaxseed ready to go. Here is fresh fruit. If you want to add nuts, I'm going to suggest that you toast them in an oven, just the way we've done it right here. Put them on a pan, put them in the oven, and don't be shy about doing as much as you can use in 2 or 3 weeks. They hold really, really well once they're toasted. So I've got some nuts that have been all chopped up. You can see them right here. I've got almonds, walnuts, pecans, and I think breakfast is just about ready. As I'm putting this together, let me suggest to you that when I have breakfast and it looks like this, I start to think of it almost like a game. How many different nutritional powerhouses can I build into one meal? How many superfoods? So we'll begin with not just 1 grain, but 10 grains. And those 10 grains have been supplemented with 3 or 4 different fruits. I've got raisins, cherries, cranberries, and apricots. And then I'm going to add some fresh fruit. Berries like raspberries and blueberries are really good for you. Strawberries likewise. It might be apples, it might be banana. And then we're going to add nuts. I think it's important. There's a lot of sweet and there's a lot of starch in here. So you want to make sure that you introduce protein in the form of yogurt, which is coming, and nuts. Likewise, good quality fats. I'm going to add a big dollop of yogurt on top. And then if you decide you think it's not sweet enough, you can always add a little bit of honey, but be careful. The dried fruit is sweet, the fresh fruit is sweet, the grains themselves tend to be a little bit sweet. So if you add honey, just a little drizzle is really all you need. And then finally, the sesame and the flax. You stop to consider what we've got in there. 4 different kinds of fresh fruit, 4 different kinds of dried fruit, 4 different nuts, 10 grains, and top it all off with a little sesame and a little flax. That is a quick and nutritious breakfast. So yesterday we cooked a whole bunch of grains. I had them on the stove, and what was left over I saved in a small container just like this. There's a strategy in this, and I want to make sure that it's clear. If at the beginning of the week you plan your menus for an entire week, then you can begin to realize efficiencies. So I don't cook barley for just 1 meal. I might cook barley for 2 or even 3 meals. I don't cook enough breakfast cereal for only 1 meal, but maybe 3 meals. And I spread them across multiple days and across multiple meal periods. That's exactly what we're going to be doing here with these grains that I have cooked already. I'm going to make a dish for breakfast, and it might surprise you, fried rice. But think about it for a second. My fried rice is going to have ham. I eat ham for breakfast. It's going to have eggs. It's going to have some vegetables from a previous meal that are being repurposed, and it's going to have grains. And all those things seem entirely appropriate for a breakfast. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is make a little omelet. Let me turn the heat on, and we'll crack a couple of eggs. Now, because this is an Asian dish, rather than seasoning this with salt and pepper, I'm going to put a little bit of soy sauce in here. I've got a pan hot. I want to make a thin omelet. A non-stick pan like this is a great little treat. And as this gets closer and closer to being done, I'm going to spread it out. And we'll turn the heat off. And I'm going to bring that over here and just slide it out onto my cutting board. This egg is going to go into our fried rice a little bit later on. I'm going to let it cool, and I'm going to chop it up. All right. Next, I'll bring the wok over. And we'll get that hot. There's no reason that while I'm busy doing other things, the pan can't be preheating. So what are we going to put in this? Egg, mushrooms. Let's get these mushrooms cut up. I'm going to take the stem end off and discard that. And I think I'll leave them in pieces that are easily distinguishable. Here's another. The stem end comes off. These trumpet mushrooms, Trumpet Royale, the stem comes off, and I'm going to cut them up into slices that are a little bit bigger, but also identifiable. And we'll set that aside. The ham is cut already. This asparagus is from a previous meal. It's been blanched separately, and I like it that way because it holds on to its green color better than if I were to saute it from raw. So blanched, shocked in cold water to stop the cooking, and it holds on to that beautiful green color. I'm going to put some carrots into this dish. And I'm going to cut them on a long bias because I like the way it looks. One of the great things about fried rice as a breakfast item is that stir frying is a very fast technique. That's the nature of the beast. It's fast. So if you want to get out the door, you could do worse than to make fried rice. All right, we're just about there. Fried rice actually works better if the grains can be cooked ahead and refrigerated overnight. I'm going to take the egg and gather it up and just chop it into pieces. And we are ready to cook. I'll turn the heat up on the wok. Now, a quick little lesson here. You can use a saute pan. A saute pan is entirely appropriate. You don't need a wok, but it makes for a great show here. When you're cooking over high heat, start by getting the pan hot first. The pan needs to be hot, then the oil goes in. All right. When we're ready, I'm going to add the oil to the pan. And as soon as it begins to smoke, in goes some of what we're cooking. In this case, those things that take the longest time to cook. So the mushrooms and the carrots. The great thing about a wok, its shape is designed to take the food and move it back to the hottest part of the fire. If you have foods that are tough or resist getting tender, you can always splash a little bit of water in here and steam the vegetables. But for our purposes, I think we'll be fine. I'm going to add the ham as well. And I'm going to add the green onions. I'm trying to create a flavorful fat to cook the rice in. I'm already starting to see a little bit of color on these mushrooms. I'll gather up the egg. The egg is cooked already, so it doesn't need any more cooking. Likewise, the asparagus is cooked. I'll get rid of some of this other paraphernalia. We'll bring up our grains. I'm not going to just fry rice. I'm going to fry a little bit of the wheat and the barley and the brown rice that we saved. All right, so first some rice. I love adding multiple grains in here because you get sort of a visual texture and a nuttiness that comes from all these grains. You want this dish to be colorful. You want the dish to be flavorful. You might have to break up some lumps in the grains, and if it ever gives you any trouble and decides it wants to stick, a little bit more oil is entirely appropriate. I've got just enough time to take these and set them aside for another meal. Okay. Pressing the rice down against the pan so that the grains can sear is a nice idea. At this point, everything's hot. The mushrooms are cooked, the carrots likewise. I think it's time to add the asparagus, which just needs to warm up, and the egg as well. So there's one piece of this dish that remains to be done, and that is it needs to be seasoned. Salt and pepper would be entirely appropriate. I'm going to add a little bit of pepper, but instead of salt, I'm going to add soy sauce. And I like to put it right on the hot metal of the pan. So it begins to reduce. It doesn't make the whole dish dark, but instead reduces down and just flavors the whole dish. And in a lot of Chinese cooking, what you will see is that they will wait until the very end to add a little bit of sesame oil. It's very aromatic, and for that reason, you wait until the end so that the aroma can sort of captivate you. Add it too soon, and it's lost. So I think the time is now. Doesn't take very much. And we can turn the heat off. Before we serve it, I think it's time to taste. And let's get this on the table. All right. The great thing about this dish is that if there were any left over, you could put it into a container and take it with you to work the following day. Warm it up in a microwave. I'm going to put a little bit of cilantro on top, and I think we're ready to go. Now, you remember we started the day with a cup of coffee, and we've seen a lot of different things. With a little bit of planning, with a little bit of forethought, and one or two strategies, you can do better than coffee and a box of cereal for breakfast. Cheers.